Morning.
Yes, yes, yes. No, no, let me take this opportunity. Sister, let me apologize first because of my disappearance. Sometimes the technology will deal with you, even though you might think that you understand it. Yes, Sister, I just want to check first in terms of whether are we having a quorum, and then you flight the agenda for us so that we can start.
Yes, Chair, the meeting is forming a quorum.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Kale. Let me take this opportunity once again to send my words of gratitude to everyone that has attended the meeting, understanding our busy schedules, first and foremost to honorable members that are crisscrossing the country as the mandate that we are sent by our provinces to further at this level, and also the officials that are always, supporting these honorable members to ensure that at least they find a level of comfort in terms of the work that they are doing to service their different constituencies. Their work is indeed acknowledged, and also the departments consistently to make our oversight work a little bit more easier. However, we cannot shy away from the fact that there are indeed certain challenges that we are confronted with that needs also to be addressed. Because if they are not being addressed, we will find ourselves not being achieving what we seek to achieve. I can see also that there is a decision from the Department of Education and also NFSAS that will be making our presentation for today. We welcome them. They must feel at home. We will engage as per the presentation, as we've done last week with the AG. When the AG was laying a foundation, if I may put it like that, in order for us to understand, these presentations, because critically our oversight work is informed, by what has been presented for us. How do we improve in terms of the gaps that we are identifying on a constant basis? I know it's complex. It's a complex environment. Higher education, specifically, we're not dealing with the question of funding. It's not a child's play. Every year we are coming across the same problems. I think we must find a way or a situation of closure to that situation, understanding the question of numbers, the university that are being overwhelmed with, but at a certain stage we must, because I cannot personally accept a situation of students being arrested on the basis that they are fighting for their rights to access to higher education. Higher education access includes the financing. So those are the issues that we are confronting yearly. I believe that we must come closer, through our efforts. We're not saying that there is nothing that is being done, but the institutions themselves, they must find a way, because once these students are having criminal records, they are going to struggle to study first and foremost, also to get to be on the job market. So we must try by all means, but we will engage the institutions, on a one-by-one situation, so that we don't find ourselves, being. I understand the question of law, but in enforcing law, different circumstances and different situations must be able to be looked at. So by those few words, I'm trying to welcome everyone However, I must raise, our displeasure, if it's a correct word. We've been writing letters to support a minister wanting to engage as a select committee. We have not been getting any positive response. We are not a select committee only of education. We need also to extensively get the minister. The office is not responding, and we do not want to be seen as people who are just supporting the budget, and thereafter, if we are treated as such, the minister really, we are going to have some serious problems. However, we'll continue to engage that department, specifically the minister, to create a platform for us, because last time he was here, he wanted us to support the budget. And then now we supported the budget. He's nowhere to be found. So we are noting with very, very, displeasure that part of that kind of conduct from the minister. So those are my few words that I wanted to open and welcome the meeting. Can we adopt the agenda as presented in front of us, honorable members? Can I note hands? Honorable Duplessis, followed by Honorable Mukwele.
Thank you, Chair. I move to adopt the agenda, and I'd like to support your assertion that we do need the other ministries to report to the Select Committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Duplessis. Honorable Mukwele.
No, thanks, Chair, and greetings to honorable members, officials. I rise to support honorable member and also to support the assertion you made, Chair, to say that we need to be taken serious as the Select Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Can we get apologies, Ms. Kaka?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members, once again. Chair, I've got 6 apologies in total. The first apology is from the minister.
Sorry, honorable, Ms. Kaka, your audio is not clear. Maybe you are far. You can proceed, Ms. Kaka.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Loud and clear now. Thank you very much.
Oh, Chair, I was saying I've got 6 apologies in total. The first apology is from the minister. She's on an official visit with the Deputy President in Japan. The second apology is from the Deputy Minister. He's attending the SPCHD cabinet meeting. The third apology is from the DG. He's accompanying the minister on an official visit to Japan. The fourth one is from Honorable Finis. She's in a very remote area where there's no network. The fifth apology is from Honorable Briet. She's on an oversight visit. Apology is from Honorable Baines. She's traveling between by-elections road where there's no network. The DG has appointed Dr. Sotikwa, the DDG responsible for university education, to lead the department delegation. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Kaka. Honorable members, can we accept the note and accept the apologies as presented?
Chair?
Yes, Honorable Kwele.
maybe I see that you don't see hands.
No,
Chair, without much ado, Chair.
It was Honorable Adriansa, and then it's you.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Honorable
you.
Adriansa, yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move to adopt the apologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mugwele.
No, second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mugwele. Can we now proceed to our presentations? We will start with the Department of Higher Education, because I believe that we have two presentations for today.
Good morning to you, Chairperson and honorable members. Thank you for this opportunity, and I wish to again apologize profusely for the absence of our minister. She is away on an official visit, as indicated, Chair. And
sorry, Mrs. Sotsekwa. Can you just a glimpse of your video so that we can see that we're not talking to a robot, and then we can just switch it off. You can proceed with it when it's off.
My sincere apologies. That is me, Chair. Thank you very much. I am not a robot.
Thank you very much. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Let me indicate again, Chair, we truly appreciate the opportunity to present to you this morning. As indicated, both our Minister and our DG are aware on an official visit with the Deputy President in Japan. I come to this meeting not on my own, Chair. I'm supported by my colleagues from the department. I'm supported by DDG Zungu and DDG Fuchani, representing the TVET and CET colleges respectively. I'm also supported in the room by Dr. Stander and Mr. Wasim Karim from the NSFAS, who will largely speak to the NSFAS presentation, and the support staff from the DG and the Minister's Office. Again to you, Chair, good morning, and to the honourable members. My name is indeed Marcia Sotsekwa. I'm the DDG ordinarily of the University Education branch. Today, I am standing in for the DG, and I'll serve as the acting DG. In that respect, I will lead the delegation. Chairperson and honourable members, we will provide an overview of the NSFAS matters in relation to application and appeals for 2025, student loans in 2024 and 2025, and defunded students. We view this opportunity to address the Select Committee as a means of demonstrating and discussing the accomplishments of NSFAS, as well as areas for improvement based on data from the 2024 and 2025 progress reports. As the department chair, we recognize and comprehend the significance of ensuring that...
Sorry, will you make arrangement to fly the presentations, because maybe mine only... I understand that the presentations were sent to us, but at least it makes a little bit more easier also when it is being flight while making presentations.
Yes, Chair. This is just my opening remarks. I will quickly move to the presentation shortly. We will certainly flight it up. As a department chair, we recognize and comprehend the significance of ensuring that NSFAS continues to effectively and efficiently offer financial aid to students from working class and low-income families in a sustainable manner that promotes access to and success in post-school education. Chairperson, I will not be long in my opening remarks, safe to say that the NSFAS presentation is quite detailed, and I will certainly want to give them time to speak to their slides. And the short overview from the universities will similarly be presented. If you can just confirm, Chair, how much time are you availing to us for these presentations? Chairman?
Let's make it 30-30 because I do not understand. Then if we move beyond that, then because we are also having other meetings after this one. So we're trying to manage the question of time because there are still engagements after that. So 30 parties, you will see how to manage the question of time if there are,
All right. Let
But
me
I don't
start.
want you to leave I don't want you to leave anything that you feel that needs to be, but just to be precise. And I'm cautious of question of time because by 12 o'clock there are other members who will be leaving us to attend the other meetings.
All right.
Collapse is.
All right. From TVET, is there anyone who will be sharing on our behalf? Colleagues? Is there anyone who will be able to share the screen?
Can we ask Mrs. Kaka to assist us then? I don't know if you do not have anyone from your own side. If it's the same presentations that were sent to us.
Yes, it's exactly the same presentation, Chair. I'm just not able to do it for some reason. Technically, it's not linking to Zoom. Otherwise, I would happily share. Thank you very much. If you can just put it to screen mode, screen play. Thank you very much. The button at the bottom. If you go to the extreme right bottom, yes, there. Perfect. Thank you very much. So, Chair, as I've indicated, we'll lead with the university presentation, and I think it's important that we start with the reflection of the matric results. So, Chair, you would have noted from all the media reports that 615,429 candidates obtained their national senior certificates in January 2025. 337,158 learners obtained a bachelor's certificate, and this is 6.9% more than the class of 2023. From our analysis, we also learned that 67% come from quintile 1 to 3. In other words, from largely our poorer schools. And this is something to be proud of because it means they really performed extremely well in spite of their limitations. And this also indicates to us that this 67% are going to be the ones that will need the most NSFAS support. Of this cohort of learners, Chair, 3,321 learners with special needs also attained their bachelor passes. What is not frequently reported, Chair, is that universities and the TVETs also have admission criteria. So as much as we had a large number of students who obtained bachelor passes, on top of that, students need to move through a second filter and it's called the ASP score. And that admission score essentially is where most students then struggle to enter the system. We did further analysis of the matric results, and we noted, Chair, that 69.1% passed mathematics and 79.6% passed physics. And whilst the maths passes went up, the physics passes dropped. And this is a concern for us, given that we are trying to migrate more of our students towards the sciences. Next slide, please. So, Chair, those students who did not make it into our public universities, and I will speak to the numbers as I progress, were carried, some of them were carried by our private higher education system. So the private universities, as you can see in these slides, have incrementally taken on more and more students. And if you look at the average, it's roughly an average rate of 10% annually. Next slide, please. Where are our private universities located? Here you can see, Chair, that they are largely located in Gauteng. There's 157 of them, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, 98 of them, Western Cape, 74, Eastern Cape, 28, Free State, 10, Mpumalanga, 9, Northwest, 8, Limpopo, 7, Northern Cape, 2. Next slide, please. 10 universities in the beginning of this year accommodated late applications, Chair. I'm just having a challenge, yes, late applications. That is CPUT in the Western Cape, DUT in KwaZulu-Natal, MUT in KwaZulu-Natal, TUT in Gauteng, Rhodes University in the Eastern Cape, UJ in Gauteng, University of Limpopo, UNISA, UniZulu in UKZN, and in KZN and VUT in Gauteng. 3 universities out of this group accommodated walk-ins. Most of the universities, Chair, proceeded with online registration, which has become popular for students because then it means they do not need to travel from their respective homes to confirm their registrations. But walk-in is still accommodated for students who do not have access to technology and so forth. The semester started in February and is designed to conclude in December. This is mentioned specifically, Chair, because we are concerned that the late release of the matric results impact the schedule of the university start and close period. And then, of course, 2-day period embargo, a 2-day embargo was imposed this year specifically to ensure that we did not have chaos, and this is highly controlled environment in which the results are released. But universities are increasingly becoming unhappy in the lateness of the release of the results. Invariably, it is the NSFAS students that are impacted the most because those students who can afford are able to pay quickly as soon as the results are released, but the NSFAS students are not able to do so. We are engaging Department of Basic Education to ensure that the results are released as they used to be in the past in December. And this gives universities and the NSFAS a sufficient time to unroll the acceptance period. Next slide, please. As I indicated earlier, Chair, these are really the numbers. You would all know that the newspapers indicated that millions of students entered the system, but actually it's not correct to say so. We should rather say millions of applications, because one student invariably makes 3 or 4 applications, and that is not considered in the way the results are reported. In any case, what we've presented here before you are the application numbers, that is one student making multiple applications, and it translating to 343,000 plus in CUT, 214,000 plus in CPUT, DUT, which is Durban University of Technology, 199,000 plus. I'll go down the list, but I do hope, Chair, then you can see the enrollment then translates to far less. And if we go back to the top, you will see that we would be sitting enrolled students sitting at 4,515 at CUT, Cape University of Technology, sitting at 9,295, DUT 9,454, and so forth. Whilst we accept these enrollment numbers, we also have returning students, and these they have to be provided for in addition to the first-time entering students in the first column. So if you look at the total enrollment per university, they are accommodated for in the last column, and those would be the final numbers that universities would be working with based on the funding available. Next slide, please. And so these 2 slides cover the 26 universities. And if you note, Chair, it is a fraction of the number of applications, not number of applicants, number of applications that are then accepted through the system. Next slide, please. This slide shows the total number of university students accepted in the system, just over 800,000. And you can see, Chair, the blue being the actual and the orange being the target. And this slide really only confirms undergrad, UG, and PG is postgrad. It really just confirms the limitations of the funding. If we could, we would accept more students, but we've got to work within what is available in the budget. Next slide, thank you. So as of March, well over 91.7% plus students of university over enrollment targets had been reached. And this is in essence, if we look at the total, 1,152,418. And for undergrad, we've already enrolled 95% of the targeted headcount. Again, the sitting 952,720. Postgraduate enrollment percentage, again, this was if you consider my earlier slide, of that group, 77% had already been registered. And postgraduates, Chair, let me emphasize, are allowed to enroll for most part until about the month of August. We are on track, Chair, to meet the planned and agreed upon headcount targets, we hope, at least where it's concerning the postgrads. Next slide. Total applied, and this, I think the newspapers said 6 million. No, it is 4,775,321 who applications, so not applications that were supplied to our universities. Spaces available, only 201,925. And then, of course, we've got to accommodate the returning students at 739,264. And this is really the reality that we face in view of our limited budget. What is the solution ultimately we propose, Chair, is to encourage more of our students to move towards the TVET colleges, given the limitations in universities, and the CET colleges. We would also, if possible, if additional funding were available, like to fast track the building of our two universities. The feasibility studies were concluded, and if possible, move our more matured students. In this slide, it's called returning students, move more of them to online programs so that we can carry more F10, which is first-time entry students, into the system. Next slide, please. Then, Chair, we have a system which is in its pilot phase, but this pilot phase is reaching a point of conclusion. And the idea behind the Central Application Services was to centralize all of these numbers. So instead of having students apply to each institution individually and having each individual institution making its own decisions, the idea was that all the students would submit their applications here through the Central Application Server, and the Central Application Server would, on the basis of the admission criteria, then would be the feeder system to the different universities. This pilot phase is coming to a conclusion, and Chair, we hope to bring to the legislature the legal instrument through which the Central Application Services would be fulfilling its responsibilities. This was a decision of Cabinet some few years ago, and we are now ready. We hope we will be able to do it within this the coming financial year, to institutionalize the Central Application Services. In short, we believe we've learned a lot through the pilot phase, and we have engaged most of the schools, engaged most of the universities. Of course, we do have to get more of them to sign on, but it is work in progress. Thank you, Chair. I now wish to hand over, next slide, to my colleague, DDG Zungu, who will speak to the TVET colleges. Over to you, DDG Zungu. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soqiwa, the acting DG, and greetings to the Honorable Chair and Honorable members of the esteemed Select Committee. If we can just move to the next slide. This is just the numbers in terms of TVET enrollments, planned versus actual, and we've broken them down per region. We have 6 regions all in all, because we've got provinces that are combined as one region. That will be Northwest combined with Mpumalanga, and we also have Gauteng that is combined together with Free State, and we also have Northern Cape, Western Cape that are also combined. The rest of the other regions, which is Eastern Cape, KZN, Limpopo, those are standalone provinces as regions. So we have the 5 categories of programs in TVET colleges: the National Certificate Vocational with an entry level 2 and exiting at entry level 4. which is an equivalent of a matric at a TVET college. We also have Report 191, popularly known as NATED programs, and that are divided into business studies, which stand for BS, and Report 191, engineering studies, that's what ES stands for. We also have a program that is providing the bridging support for those students that would have not met the entry requirements from matric, to assist them, particularly on maths and science. That is called the PLP. And then we have the new programs that we are now introducing in the TVET colleges, that is called occupational programs, replacing in the main the Report 191 engineering studies N1 to N3. So that is the breakdown of the program offerings within the TVET colleges. So if you look at Eastern Cape with a planned enrollment of 19,240, the actual at this point in time is 16,474. Of course, for engineering and business studies, Report 191, we have multiple intakes in a year. For business studies, we've got 2 intakes, which is broken into 2 semesters. Semester 1 starting in January and ending in June. And then we've got the last semester starting from July, ending in December. With Report 191 engineering studies, that one is broken into 3 trimesters in a year. That will start from January up until April, and then the students will write their first exams, and then we'll have another intake in May, ending around July, and then the last trimester would commence till end of December. So we've got multiple intakes. So at this point in time, the numbers, it means that the colleges in Eastern Cape will only have 2,766 open spaces to fill up for the remainder of the two trimesters that are remaining, as well as the semesters. But if you look again there on Report 191 business studies, you only have 282 spaces available for the 2 semester, the remaining 1 semester left, but there is none. In other words, they won't be able to have any intake in the remaining 2 trimesters in the Eastern Cape. We can move to the next slide. The next region is Gauteng. Of course, Gauteng has got the highest number in terms of intake, Gauteng and Free State combined, with 110,350. At this point in time, we are already sitting at 104,452. That then leaves us with only 10,386 remaining spaces. But we can see that on NCV, we are already over-enrolled with about 812 students or spaces that are over-enrolled. But if we then take it down, it means that we might still be within our target for the remainder of the year. But obviously, with an over-enrollment on the National Certificate Vocational. We can move to the next slide. KwaZulu-Natal, I think on this one, they've given us the first quarter targets instead of the year targets, which is at 57,805. But the year target is sitting at about 113,000 in terms of the breakdown. So I think there is room for KZN still. In terms of the first quarter, they are sitting at about 14,760 intake that will still be available for the remainder of the year. Of course, the worry will be on the year program because we only have 1 intake. So in other words, there is on the NCV, we have under-enrolled by 4,023, and that will be a worrisome figure because they will not have another intake for this year. But that will balance out. It means those spaces, we can then share them with the remainder of the other programs so that we can increase our intake. The next slide. And Limpopo, we have 55,538 planned. We're sitting at actual of 34,526 and about 4,019 that is the remaining spaces for the remainder of the year. We can move to the next slide. Mpumalanga Northwest region, as we can see that we have about 40,570 planned versus the 31,008. So there's about 9,042 spaces that are reserved for semester 1, trimester 2, as well as trimester 3, plus the multiple intake for occupational programs. So that one, again, over-enrolled subscription on the National Certificate Vocational of about 99 students that are over-subscribed. Next slide. Western Cape, Northern Cape, with 68,000 planned and actual of 46,466, and with remaining spaces of about 21,561. That still remains. Again, the same concern on NCV that we have a shortage of 749 students. Next slide. That will be the end of the TVET sector. Thank you very much, Chair. We'll hand over to my colleague, Ms. Fuchane. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In terms of the community education and training, I'm also going to try and put up my video. My name is Tembisa Fuchane, responsible for CET. I'm going to give an update in relation to the enrollments and registration for the 2025 academic year. Can we move to the next slide, please? We can skip this slide, just gives the presentation outline. Thank you. We have 9 community education and training colleges, 1 in each province, and they are named after each province. And we have 1,791 contact sites for teaching and learning, which is 200 main centers, what we know as community learning centers, and 1,591 satellite centers. Next slide. In terms of the preparation for the 2025 academic year, the college is opened for students on the 15th of January this year, and for administration, they opened on the 13th of January. We did our preparations in the last quarter of the 2024 academic year. Next slide. These are some of the focus areas that we did in terms of the readiness related to teaching and learning, the examination readiness, readiness of assessment at selected sites, and of course, partnerships. Next slide. In terms of community education and training colleges, at this stage, unfortunately, we do not take online applications or take online registration. We are currently working on a system that will allow us to be able to do that, whilst at the same time also being able to do manual applications. So in terms of applications, students do a walk-in into our community learning centers, and they also do the same in relation to registration. We have limited resources in terms of LTSM, so we apply the textbook retrieval policy. Those students who have completed in the previous year need to return their textbook so that they can be used by the new students. We have more than a sufficient number of lecturers in our community colleges, maybe a challenge that we face is that of having lecturers, particularly for mathematics and science. Thank you. Next slide. All new students are orientated. They've been given their timetables, and we also apply recognition of prior learning. Most of our colleges have already conducted SRC elections and orientation. I also need to indicate at this stage that we have not turned away any student that came to a community education and training college. All of them have been, those who came to apply have been taken in, and we have not had any incidences that we wish to report in relation to community education and training colleges. Thank you. Next slide. This is an indication of the available spaces, and this is per program. I need to indicate through you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, that we are the only institutional type that takes a student, whether they have an education, whether they don't have any form of education, whether they may have left school earlier than they planned, because we understand the challenges that are faced by our communities, or whether they have a matric or they need to improve their matric. Maybe they got subjects that they did not complete. Those that can't read or write, we still take them in, and those will be at level 1, for an example. We do take them in. We also offer skills programs, occupational programs, and we also offer non-formal programs. Now, what you see here is an indication per college. I indicated earlier that all our colleges are named according to the provinces. So if we look, for an example, at the Eastern Cape, they indicated that they've got available spaces for 13,027 students. And nationally, we had available spaces, new students coming in, not 415,381. Next slide. In terms of the enrollments, as of the 7th of March, 2025, the first column gives the college name, and then it gives, the subsequent columns give you an indication of the various programs, including, of course, we do offer the National Senior Certificate. We offer the amended Senior Certificate. The matric programs that we offer are geared at those students who are adults, who in many instances are not able to go back to the school system. And therefore they come into our community colleges, and then they can complete their matric qualification. As of the 7th of March, the enrollment data, can I indicate at this stage that this is unverified? It's sitting at 177,352. This is a combination of completely new students and returning students. Next slide. I've already spoken to the issue of monitoring and support visits. I'll just like to highlight at this stage that our Deputy Minister, Honorable Manamela, as well as the Portfolio Committee, have conducted oversight visits to our community education and training colleges. Free State, Gauteng, Northwest, and Limpopo, they have been visited by a combination of the Deputy Minister and the Portfolio Committee. In addition to that, I also have conducted, including the senior management of the CET branch at head office, we visited our centers to ensure their state of readiness for the 2024 academic year, as well as the regional offices, they have done the same. Next slide. This is just a continuation in terms of the names of the sites that have been visited. Next slide. This is an indication of the number of sites that have been visited in terms of readiness for the academic year. I've spoken to this. We can move. This is important in the that I need to indicate through you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, community colleges students are not eligible for the NSFAS bursary. So it means that they don't get money for tuition, for allowance, and for accommodation. But the location of the community education and training colleges is such that we encourage students to go to their nearest community learning center so that they don't have to incur expenses of travel. But I must indicate that we serve very, very disadvantaged students, very marginalized students. These are students who dropped out of school in many instances. Schools which had a scholar transport system, schools which had a nutrition program, and they come into the community college and there are none of those things. And we see how it impacts some of our students, particularly the aspect of nutrition. Students ziyalamba kunzima, and we are trying by all means to see how we can assist them through private partnerships, particularly in relation to the nutrition program. What we did in the last quarter of 2024 was to provide the third tranche to our community colleges, that is only to assist with the operational expenses. For example, buying LTSM, buying cleaning material, renting. 95% of our community education and training colleges, they operate from Department of Basic Education schools. So some of them are paying rent. It's a very small minimal amount. Some of them are not paying, but they have to assist with the cleaning. In addition to that, we've already given them the fourth tranche, which amounted to about 55 million, and that was in January this year, so that they could run their operations for the academic year. Thank you. That was the last slide, and perhaps if this does not disappoint me, Honorable Chair, I will try to show my video. I'm not sure if it's showing, so you can see the person who is talking to you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG Fochane. Chair, with your permission, we will swiftly move to our next presentation. Our chairperson, Dr. Stander, will lead the delegation from NSFAS. She is in the meeting with the acting CEO, Mr. Wasim Karim, and I'd like to hand over to them now. There is a second presentation, a separate one, NSFAS. Thank you very much. There we go. So over to them. Thank you, Chair. Over to you, Dr. Stander.
Thank you, Dr. Shukniwa. Thank you, Chair. Mine is just to introduce the acting CEO. He will be making the presentation on behalf of NSFAS. Over to you, Wasim.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning, members. Let me also recognize the leadership of the Department of Higher Education and Training and the Chairperson of the NSFAS Board, Dr. Stander. Our presentation today will focus on the NSFAS 2025 application cycle, as well as the funding set aside for the 2025 academic year. We will take colleagues through the applications for 2025, the status of our appeals, the loan process for the missing middle students for last year and this year, the status of our defunded students, the disbursements of funding and allowances to date, the adjustment of student allowances, and the budget that we've expended to date. To take honorable members, the application for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme starts around about September of the previous year, where students are encouraged to apply using their results. That process runs for a period of time. Internally at NSFAS, the process is for us to confirm the student type, compare their data to their South African Social Security Agency status, confirm via the Department of Home Affairs that they are citizens of the country, and compare their relationships, particularly their parental relationships. We check the verification, the completeness and correctness of their application. We assess their financial and academic eligibility with information from third parties, particularly in terms of analyzing household income, with the policy decision that students who fall up with household income under 350,000 are eligible for funding from NSFAS. We then move the student to what we call a provisionally funded status or a rejected status, or in some cases, applications are withdrawn, in which case they are closed. Should a student be rejected, that is not the end of their road with NSFAS. They still have the option to appeal. I'll take you through the status of appeals. Once we get into the new academic year, institutions of higher learning run their process of registering students. They submit that registration data to NSFAS. That registration data is then compared against students' applications, and their statuses are moved towards funded statuses, provided one, they meet the application criteria, two, they have a valid registration number from the universities. Chairperson, if we were to take members through the status of all of our applications, we have very few applications which are still on review, just 22. We do still have some which are on the verification status, which we are working hard to be able to clear. Some are still being assessed financially and with academic eligibility. The majority we will see are on provisionally funded status, about 670,000 are there. We had about 97,000 rejected applications. We have about 75,000 which are on appeals. Registration data comes in almost on a daily basis from universities. We do have a deadline of the 31st of March for registration data, but the majority of registration data has been coming in. To date, we've confirmed and fully funded 243,000 students. And we are aiming by the end of this month to have all students shifted from provisionally funded to fully funded based on the registration data that has been received. In terms of SASSA applications, we have 733,000 SASSA applications. Of these, the majority, 703,000, are provisionally funded. 14,200 were cancelled, 12,700 were rejected based on academic eligibility, and one is still awaiting academic results. We had a total of 316,000 non-SASSA applications. To date, a total of almost 288,000 have been reviewed. 28,000 of them still require additional documents, and about 147,000 non-SASSA students have been provisionally funded. I think it does speak volumes to the fact that, South Africa's social security policy is leading into its higher education policy, in that the majority of students from low-income households who are beneficiaries of social grants are able to transition into the higher education space and become self-sustainable once they've completed their higher education journey. As mentioned, we are planning to process all applications by March 2025. In terms of the appeal status, in terms of the appeal status, we have finalized and approved 32,000 of the 75,000 appeals, and those students have been moved to provisionally funded. We are still, the team is assessing about 21,000 applications, but that number comes down on a daily basis. We track these numbers on a daily basis so that we can give students feedback as soon as possible in relation to where they are. We do have students who are awaiting documents. We are awaiting about 7,000 documents. We make a daily call directly to students via messages and emails to submit their outstanding documents. We also make calls via our social media to students to please submit outstanding documents. We have closed and declined appeals for about 15,000 of the appeals. In terms of the loan for 2024, we had 1,300. Perhaps, Chair, let me start here, is to say that the loan was designed specifically to respond to the outcry from students who fall within the missing middle. We define the missing middle as students who come from a household income of between 350,000 and 600,000. In 2024, 1,300 loan applications passed the financial and academic eligibility test. We are in the process of making all payments for 2024 loan applicants by the 31st of March. We can only do that once the required information is received from the institutions. As it relates to 2025, we had close to 66,000 loan applications, of which 4 were withdrawn. For income between 350,000 and 600,000, we had about 2,000, and income greater than 600,000, we had just over 3,800. What we found is that many students who met the eligibility criteria for bursaries applied for loans. That was about 41,000. We immediately transferred those students to the bursary application system. We don't ask them to reapply, and we fund them through the process that we would have outlined in previous slides. We did find that some were previous defaulters, and based on our credit and risk policy, we have had to reject those. We did find that some have already achieved their highest qualification, so they might be applying for postgrad studies. NSFAS does not have the mandate to be able to fund postgrad studies. Some have academic ineligibility as a result of the N+ rule. There was academic ineligibility due to not meeting eligibility criteria. There are still some applications which are under review by our team, and we are aiming to conclude all of those applications by the 31st of March. Honorable members may come across instances where students are defunded. That may happen in the instance where students met the household income criteria in a previous year, but they no longer meet the household criteria. We do allow students the right of appeal, and in the first column there, we'll see that we have approved some who have been able to indicate that income does still fall below the 350,000 income threshold. With regards to income which is between 350,000 and 600,000, where there has been defunding, we do recommend those students fall into the loan or the missing middle loan fund. Where income exceeds 600,000, unfortunately, that does not fit within our funding criteria. We do have instances of incomplete or no documents received, and we are in a process of trying to liaise with those students so that we can assist them with their defunded status. In terms of disbursements, I'm sure honorable members are aware that the NSFAS often receives a great deal of criticism for late payment of allowances, and which impacts students' ability to be able to succeed in the learning environment. We are happy to say that we have made substantial payments, early payments this year, to both TVET colleges as well as universities. I'll start with TVET colleges. We provided a TVET college upfront payment of about 641 million on the 10th of January. It's calculated on 20% of each college's tuition allocation. We then paid tuition and allowances based on valid registrations. Registration data was uploaded on the 3rd of March. And once we had received that registration data to confirm that it's a valid student, we made the first disbursement of allowances to students on the 7th of March, which was a substantial batch of about 33,000 students. We then made a following payment just this last Friday of another 74,000 students, and we'll be making a final disbursement run for students on the 28th of March. So, just to indicate to honorable members that TVET colleges do not have the capacity to pay allowances directly to students, so NSFAS fulfills that function on their behalf. With universities do have the capacity to pay allowances to students, and therefore we make a combined upfront payment to universities. We've done one upfront payment thus far this year, or we've done two. The first one was about 3.7 billion rand. It's intended to cover personal care, living expenses, travel, books, and accommodation. Our second disbursement is made against valid registration data, and we made a following payment of about 2.1 billion to universities on the 7th of March. I'm not going to go through the detail of all of the payments, but we've given just a table to break down to members of the disbursements to each of the 26 public universities. Honorable Chairperson, one of the key items that was leading into the 2025 academic year was that student allowances had not been adjusted in the last 3 academic years. This is mainly because of the physical crisis that South Africa has been facing. We must note, however, that with a general increase of the cost of goods and services, as well as the cost of living crisis that we are experiencing, the real tangible value of allowances has been diminishing, and the spending power of students has been diminishing. Of course, we have to balance this consideration against the precarious physical position of the country, where I think the budget speech last week outlined how government spending remains under sustained pressure. We also considered that we have recovered significant funds through the closeout project that's been initiated by NSFAS, as well as the Special Investigating Unit recovery process. One call that has been made by students is that there has been a significant disparity between living allowances for university students, which was pegged at about 17,000 Rand, versus living allowances for TVET, which was pegged at 10,000 Rand. Having taken regard to all of the above context, NSFAS announced a decision in consultation with the department as well as the minister to increase student allowances as follows. We had a 4% blanket allowance across accommodation, tuition, learning materials, as well as living allowances and transport allowances. But quite importantly, Chairperson, for the first time, we've been able to bring parity to living allowances between university students and TVET college students. Just in terms of our budgetary constraints, NSFAS is allocated a combined value of about 48.4 billion Rand for learning in the 2025 academic year. Of that, about 5.9 billion has already been disbursed to universities, representing about 15% of the allocation, while an additional 751 million has been disbursed to TVET colleges, leaving an allocated balance of about 8.3 billion. Honorable Chair, I will pause the presentation here and hand back to the Chairperson.
Many thanks to the Chairperson of the NSFAS and the Acting CEO, Mr. Karim. Chair, I also wish to acknowledge one of my colleagues, DDG Rulani Ngwenya, who is heading our corporate services. If she can just quickly show her face, Chair, and then we can hand over back to you. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Acting DG. Good morning, honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG Ngwenya. Thank you very much, Chair. We have completed our presentations. We must acknowledge that we are constrained by the fiscus environment. We wish we could do more. But under the circumstances, this is the best that we can do with the finances allocated to us. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sotsekwa, with your team that have made the presentations to us, even those who didn't make the presentations, in the form of support for both the department and also your NFSAS. And yeah, I think they've managed to capacitate us in our political oversight work that we are constantly engaging onto. Indeed, you raised a number of issues that I would like also to engage, but I will just allow members to quickly engage both the comments and also the questions, and thereafter you will respond. But what we will plead is that once we are done with the engagements, written responses to the committee will be of assistance to further expand sheet in terms of what you will be presenting to us in the form of responses, but also in the form of your detailed response will going to be more assisting to us, you see. Thank you very much. I'm noting now, I noted members, Honorable Aris, Honorable Andreanse, Honorable Sibande, and Honorable Du Plessis. I will recognize you, Honorable Aris, in that order. You will be following in terms of the number, and Honorable Mukwele, you will be the last one. Honorable Aris, you are recognized.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Chairperson.
Sorry,
and thank
Honorable
you.
Aris. Sorry, Honorable, for the purposes of also come for recognition also from the side of the department so that they can see. Honorable members must be known.
I'm not in a stable environment, Chairperson. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for the presentation, Chairperson. I'm actually glad that NSFAS is here with us today. NSFAS is supposed to be the lifeline for our poor or disadvantaged students. But challenges faced by student payments, having a shortage, and ultimately it then lets students engage in sexual favor for survival. I want to know from them, what plans do they have in place to ensure that the students' confirmation of accommodation has been fast-tracked, and what waiting time are they in place for this students to get answers on their confirmation of application of accommodation? And then I have noted in the presentation that they mentioned that the disbursement of funds was on the 14th of March. However, in Northwest, there's still protests because the food and the book allowances are still not disbursed. And it was supposed to be disbursed by the 28th of February. What is the plan to ensure that these institutions get their funding on time? And then again, as I was saying, students lose their dignity due to administrative failures. And students experience the challenges with NSFAS year in and year out. It's the same challenges. What measures does NSFAS have in place to ensure that smooth administrative processes of NSFAS disbursement? And what is their plans to disburse these funds before the academic year is starting? And then what is the reason that NSFAS was sitting with a 4.4 billion investment surplus? And then also, I want to check what is the plans to decentralization of the NSFAS offices from Cape Town to each and every campus. And then, as I said, the students, specifically in the TVET colleges, get mistreated. Many till today are without funding, despite being told that they will get funding. What's the reason that TVET students being mistreated? And then also, in terms of UNISA, well, we feel that there's discrimination of UNISA students in a sense that they are given way less than what other institutions are getting. So I want to check with them, why is it that in online teaching like UNISA, why is it that they get lesser funding? And then in the last issue that I want to raise, and that is in terms of student accommodation, and specifically accommodation that is being funded by NSFAS, you find that the student accommodation is not up to standard when it comes to that. And I want to check from them, what measures do they have in place to monitor and evaluate these places that, give accommodation to students? And are there any norms and standards that are in place, and how do you evaluate that? Thank you, Chairperson.
That order is Honorable Andrianse.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll quickly switch on my video so that you can, let me just get there. Okay. Hope you can see me. I'm going to switch it off for bandwidth for all the other participants. Okay. Thank you for the presentations. Yes, we had the Albertus and Makosa investigation and regarding the financial aid scheme crisis. And they came up with a couple of things that I would like to engage on. And the first question is, how extensive was the alleged looting within NSFAS, and what does this suggest about the broader culture of accountability or lack thereof within our South African public institutions, and more specifically within NSFAS? And then what role, I listened and I saw these criteria, etc., and I investigated it myself, and I would like to know the role that the universities and TVET colleges and everything play in the NSFAS application itself and the funding process. As we just heard from my colleague that some funds for food, etc., and the daily living allowances haven't been paid over yet, that role. Then the next one is, what data exists on the dropout and completion rates of NSFAS funded students compared to non-funded students? And what's being done about that? The dropout students, is it investigated, the why they are dropping out? It's very important. I want to put this question. What data exists on the dropout and completion rates of NSFAS funded students compared to non-funded students? And is the dropout rate and the students themselves being followed up for the reason why? Then what lessons can be learned from past administrative failures, specifically looking at the 2023 chaotic rollout of direct payments? I know it's now being paid over to the universities, but certainly it's still an ongoing growing process. What lessons have been learned? And looking at the role of private sector partnerships, how can this be expanded, and how can it lead to expanding NSFAS capacity to support more students? Then lastly, I want to come to the infrastructure. It is very important to me that we get feedback on the infrastructure and where we are standing with the infrastructure, specifically looking at the 6th Parliament recommendations that has been made. And there also were mentioned of public-private partnerships and unutilized buildings for this purpose, and where buildings are needed for more education institutions. If we can have a breakdown on that and where we are on the progress and the way forward on this. Thank you. That's it from me.
Thank you, Chairperson. Spelling little, Chairperson. I'll try to. I don't know whether am I audible, Chairperson?
Honorable Sibanda, you can proceed.
Okay. I tried to open my video, but I can see that it doesn't show. Unfortunately, if it doesn't show, I'll continue then.
No, your video has been shown, but you can switch it off so that
Thank
it
you.
doesn't affect your
Yes.
audio.
Right. Chairperson, mine is few. Yabona isilungu sibalekile sengikhuluma isintu manje sibalekile gone. Chairperson, I wanted to comment with something. I was very touched when the first presenter indicated that the schools, in terms of the quintile schools, which are most vulnerable, they performed well. My comment is just imagine if it happens in a proper education, whereby our own kids, they do everything in their own language. What do we expect in terms of this competition we're talking about? Because the present system, it allows other people, other kids to get more advantage than other kids. That is my comment. And then I wanted to find out something, the first one with the presentation. When they talk about the budget against vacancies, I mean, and TVET registration, how do you conclude to draft the budget to finalize? Because to me, it's very difficult to calculate vacancies. So, I mean, if they can elaborate that, how do they manage to get their budget? And then also you go to the second one, the higher education and training. I don't know, my question is here, the first one, but I've told you that this is humble. The second question is that in only higher education and training, I need a clarity on this one, that they are having more lectures, but they are still facing a challenge in math and science. Hey, I'm a little bit concerned if there is that challenge of math and science. And if they can give us an assurance that for how long is it going to take to address that matter of science and math and science? Because in nowadays, the key fundamental key in our societies is math and science. And then another one is that okay, I've got an interest on this one. I wanted you to find out because they said they taking kids who are coming in, I mean, in short self-registration, whatever. That is correct, no problem. But my question, do they have any system to monitor that after getting those results in terms of observing to be absorbed outside? Do these people, I mean, do they have a system to monitor whether these people are employed or they are doing further education? Because to me, I'm a little bit concerned. I've got my legal experience, what was happening in Mpumalanga in the past, whereby in the first earlier of 1990s, after the New Dispensation 1994, we discovered that in Mpumalanga, there are a lot of colleges, like Mango College, Ngwenya College, all this stuff. Mpumalanga was producing a lot of teachers. Unfortunately, at the end, it was very difficult for them outside because they couldn't get jobs. But with this one, I wanted to find out whether do they have any system to monitor whether these people are being absorbed or not. And then again, I mean, with this one, to avoid the issue of also, which is we call it a wasteful and fruitless expenditure, because to take a lot of people to be educated, you see, to educate them while they are not going to be absorbed, is wasteful and fruitless expenditure to me. And then with NEFSAS, the presentation with NEFSAS, Chairperson, I'm a little bit concerned about the issue of rejected application and appeal, and also they call it missing middle. My question is that for how long does it take to correct that situation? Because there is an era whereby they indicated that there are students also who are affected where they are waiting for their academically results and that. The question is for how long does it take? Because I'm a little bit concerned whereby some of the kids, they stay long term up until they become demoralized. And then another one, funding. I wanted to find out, Chairperson, that there is a thing which they've indicated in terms of disinvestment of funding and allowance in the TVET colleges. So in terms of a close-out projects and especially investigation unit. My question on that one, may they please indicate that how much was recovered? And like just to give us a statement and without showing us the fruits. Because it's like showing me a tree, but without fruits. To me, that exercise is not fruitful. And then lastly, Chairperson, I wanted you to commend one of the achievement of the NEFSAS, which they've done in the past, whereby they were trying to cut the middlemen in terms of paying for accommodations. And then they were so that they allow the direct payments in the accommodation. Now, here comes the question. If they can illustrate by an example that with that exercise, how many percentages we were able to save? Because if I can recall very well, in the past, there were a lot of cases which were there, according to that, of middlemen, which were holding money and the money disappeared. But the achievement, I think something was put on the ground to protect that. How many percentage which have been saved? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Sibande. Honorable Duplessis.
Thank you very much, Chair. And then thank you very much to the department for this presentation, as it is so important for redress and ensuring that people get a hand up into society and economic opportunities. There's one very detailed question that I have for the TVET presentation. You spoke about the occupational programs within different provinces or provincial clusters. And I'd like to find out why it is so high, or so the enrollment for occupational programs is so low in so many of our provinces. I mean, it would be an easy fit for people to find economic opportunities if they do address occupational or they do attend occupational programs. So just the reason as to why it's high in the Eastern Cape, KZN is lower, Mpumalanga Northwest is also lower, Limpopo is very high, and then the Western Cape and Northern Cape cluster is also quite high on that specific issue. Then I have a question, and it links into quite a lot of what the other members have said. But what concerns me in both the TVET and the NSFAS presentations, and through you, Chair, maybe they can share this information if it is available. I'll explain what the information is shortly, but there isn't a risk analysis or mitigation plan, and the data doesn't address all the major problems and challenges that are quite well known within TVET colleges as well as NSFAS. Within TVET colleges, we are aware that there is poor infrastructure, low completion rates, underfunding, lack of accountability. misalignment between education and industry needs, and also quite a few allegations of corruption. What are we doing to ensure or address those issues? And that is missing in the TVET presentation. It is also missing in the NSFAS presentation. The issues that are reasonably well known with NSFAS is delayed payments, late or no payments of allowances, over or underpayments of allowances, funding backlogs, unpaid loans for graduates, reduced funding for current students, outdated IT infrastructure, lack of communication, bureaucratic hurdles, inadequate student accommodation, leadership instability, and the list continues. And I'm just concerned that we are giving presentations that are foundational data, but it isn't speaking to why these two elements of DHET are so challenging. And whenever people say TVET or NSFAS, there's always a little bit of a something needs to be done. So through you, Chair, if we can maybe be taken into confidence if there is something like that. And then just an aside, and it's more of if one can't answer this, it's perfectly fine. But where would we be able to get a list of institutions that offer adult matric? I've been getting quite a few requests on that. Thank you very much.
Is you Honorable Mukwele?
No. Thanks very much, Chairperson. As we have instructed that so that they can see that they are not speaking to people that are not there. Chair, maybe without, because I don't think that I'll waste time, because I'm having the list of questions here, which majority of them in the main, they've been covered by honorable members. In particular, Honorable Sibande, because he was dealing with many questions, and other members. Mine, Chair, even though it might be a bit similar to what honorable members they've been indicating, issue of the dropping of mathematics, the dropping of physical science. When they were presenting, they indicated that the majority of they can pass mathematics, but when coming to the issue of science, they are now dropping. I just want to check what is it that the department is doing. But the very least and the very last question, Chairperson, even though I know other members partly they've asked that particular question, is with regard to where you'll find that a learner has passed with bachelor, but only to find that when you want to be enrolled in university, they say that it's not qualifying. Yes, I know that they've also indicated about those criteria, that they've indicated that, yes, it doesn't mean that automatically when the learner has passed with the bachelor, is automatically going to be registered. I just want to check from the department that, I mean, at the higher school, at the high school level, they are aware of those criteria, because remember, when learners they are preparing for the exam, planning to go to the university, if they will know that for me to qualify to get into the university, even if I'm qualified with bachelor, it is important for me to attain, to get such marks on this particular subject. Because like I'm saying, because on the black hat approach, it says that once you have bachelor, you can obviously get into the university, hence their competition. So I should think, Chair, like I don't want to repeat what honorable members have been indicating. I should think I've been covered even on the issue of NSFAS and all the issues that they've mentioned. Maybe for the benefit of time and without repeating what honorable members have indicated, Chair, maybe allow me to pause here. I thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members, for the questions and some comments. And also when you're responding, you will take it as such. But I have also some few just to have a bite so that they can form part of the responses. Mine is the question, firstly, that is based on bachelor passes, because we're celebrating in terms of the number that we've managed to, is an achievement. But on the presentation is giving us now another a blank view, or I mean, a negative view, if I may put it, on the question of specifically the criteria on these institutions of higher learning. How do you, because I don't think that it's, how have you managed to, or how do you try to overcome this? Because it's one of the challenges of exclusion that are being faced. You know, historically it has been there, and even today you are still experiencing it, where you discover that certain institutions are only accepting particular criteria, whilst others on the same, qualifications, So how do you manage to balance that, your universities versus your high schools, specifically your matric results, so that we don't find this situation. Also, on the question of the department, in trying to prevent the skills mismatch, which is contributory to a high number of unemployment graduates, where you discover that in certain fields, it's allowed that, an exodus of students can go and qualify for it, knowing that there is no demand for in the job market. So how do you deal with that particular question? There is this thing that is frustrating students on the side of NFSAS. In legal terms, they are calling it collusion between your service providers who are providing student accommodation to overcharge NFSAS. How do you deal with that? Specifically, that there are cases that have been identified, and all that goes back and then it affects the students and causes, the frustration to the students. And also, where the students are not receiving value for money in terms of these accommodations for the purposes of being accommodations, but when you go there and see how these students and the money have already been committed, and even though the students are not comfortable in terms of their accommodation. So I just wanted to check that. And also on the question of this community CET colleges, if I may put it, if I'm using correct wording, I'm looking in terms of the challenges that we are having in other entities. How do we balance? Because it has been happening for a number of years that the college education is lesser in terms of its value than the ones of your university. And it causes now the flooding you know, in your universities, how do you balance the two, specifically at your level of your high schools? Because I believe that if this is not known, and as it was in our case, where you were told that the only education is university education. Once you go to college, you are being regarded as a substandard, even on the top market. How do you, because this has not been addressed, it needs to be addressed, you know. And also the discussion that we once had, why a person who has studied in tertiary, I mean in TVET colleges, you acquire your theory side, and then after you acquire your theory side, you go and do your in-service training, whether 8 months, and then in terms of the qualifications, you're supposed to be recognized equally with the person that do not have that experiential training or in-service training. Your diploma will remain a substandard with the diploma that you've done in a higher education like your university. It used to be technicons at the time. And when you studied at technicon, you were duly recognized. But now with the question of technical colleges, it's something else. And you cannot proceed and do your bachelor degree, I mean your BTech, you know. So where is this discrepancies, you know, taking place? Is it us on the side of because even the job market is not being committed, you know. They are only considering, you know, those who are coming from universities. So I think, yeah, those are the issues that I wanted to reflect on. I think the last one, there must be, I don't know, the popularization of these SETs, because I believe that there is a negative attitude towards them because of how they are being perceived by the students. So I think there must be a relationship across, when we talk about higher education and your schools, there must be a relation so that learners knows exactly what is the difference, what becomes what is the value of each and every, you know, entity, and within its even at the sector of each economy and top level. Thank you very much. I will allow the responses, and also we are requesting that those written responses must be submitted indeed within 7 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those questions, Chair, and they are very helpful in many ways, helping us to reflect on our work from a very different angle. So I want to start off by truly appreciating the questions posed. We certainly will also provide the written responses. I know my colleagues have been writing and in preparation to provide you with written and I think in-depth responses, Chair. On my side, I think in the interests of managing time and managing all the questions, I will ask NSFAS to start and to respond to all the NSFAS related questions. And then I'll migrate to our CET, our DDG Fuchani to speak to CET. From there, DDG Zungu on the TVETs, and then I'll conclude with the universities. So we'll go in the reverse order. But I think because of the nature of the questions, this may help a great deal. Thank you very much, Chair. I hand over now to NSFAS to respond to the NSFAS related questions.
Thanks, DG.
Thank you,
Chairperson
Chair.
will start, yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me just switch on my video for a moment if it's giving. Sorry. Good afternoon, or no, still morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to switch it off because of the bandwidth again, and then I will address the questions as I wrote them down. Wasim will also speak in between if there is something that I'm not necessarily always clued up on operational stuff, although I am, he briefs me every morning. Okay, so I'm going to start as I wrote them down. So and I'm sorry if I don't remember all the names exactly who asked the questions. So if it's member Aris, I think you spoke about that NSFAS is a lifeline, and that funds would have been paid by the 14th of March, and that students are still waiting for food and book allowances. So, and just to get back to that specific question, institutions are, so there's two types of payments that are made by NSFAS. So if we look at institutions, we need to separate then TVETs from the universities. So TVETs are direct payments are made to students into their bank accounts by NSFAS, whereas other institutions, your universities, they get paid and then the money is then paid over to by these institutions. So I'm not sure which are the institutions where you are referring to. So if these are then universities, the food and book allowances have been paid over to the universities. It's then the universities that need to then disburse the money further. If it is then the TVETs, the CEO will be investigating why it did not happen like that. But I'm sure students that were registered and updated did get the entirety of their allowances paid by NSFAS. So perhaps if you could also just send us a little bit more detail where it didn't happen, then we can investigate specifically those problems. Then there was a question on the accommodation and the standard and the monitoring and evaluation thereof. So there is at this point, there is accreditation providers that are going through it. But you also need to know that within accommodation, there is almost like 3 sets of accommodation that is happening concurrently at the moment. You have your university or institution then managed accommodation, which is normal res, where then there is private accommodation, and that is 2 sets of private accommodation. It's both the ones that are on the portal and the ones that are not on the portal at the moment. So I do think where we experience the most problem is where it is people that is not on the portal. And this would also then affect the more, unfortunately, more the rural or non-metro students, where, I think Aris, you also wrote there that many people don't have access to technology, or they do not trust technology to do these things for them. So I want to also go back then to the sex favors for survival that you raised. So the specific instance where I think that you are referring to was the one that came into the news. In that specific instance, the student wasn't registered anymore at the higher education institution, and she was no longer on the NSFAS system. The last time that specific student was registered was in 2018. I did ask on all platforms for students to let us know if this happens, to go to the SAPS, to lay a criminal case against people so that we could also do investigations. Until now, neither Wasim or myself has received any of these cases to follow up. So while I think it is popularized by the media, because it does it does happen, and that specific one wasn't necessarily a case that happened. We just go. I think the infrastructure is the TVET question. Okay. Then I think Orenste, member Orenste, you were asking about how extensive is the looting, and the role of partnership. So through the Office of the DG, we are looking at how to incorporate partnerships. So we can't just open up the portal or the doors for any public partnerships, right? It also opens, if you open up your doors for anyone to come and speak to you, you also open up the door for other types of anyone's to come and speak to you. And so we are running through the Office of the DG when it comes to this. Remember, as NSFAS, we need to manage a lot of money that goes through it. And if private partnerships, it's not that we are adverse to it. There's also a whole process that runs there. So, but like I say, at this moment we are running a pilot, or not a pilot, a discussion through the Office of the DG, and we will get back to you and we'll give you more detail as it unfolds. The regionalization question and decentralization, I now wonder, speaks directly to the accountability. So the regionalization and decentralization is something that's been coming along a long while. However, the board is also investigating at how do we want to implement this with the help of the current CEO. And because if you decentralize and regionalize, you do get a line of sight accountability, right? So, and I think that's what the biggest driving force behind this is. If I am then at the University of Pretoria, I can then be held accountable as an NSFAS office if there are problems at University of Pretoria or at the TVET in the Eastern Cape. So it also helps with capacity issues where you do not have the capacity in the institution to manage the NSFAS related things. So if we look at this, the chair was speaking at the last part at how do we build this ecosystem, then the regionalization will play a big role in building this ecosystem and making sure that we create centers of excellence all over, and it's not just universities. Okay, I think I've addressed everything. Okay, and now to Albert. The administration process year on year, it is a problem. Yes, it is a problem, and we are working in it. We are looking at different scenarios. We have just established different committees to look at it. We are looking at doing different audits into the company to make sure the SIU is also plotting for us at the moment the risks, which the Audit and the Risk Committee is going to look at, and to see how do we mitigate these risks that are at NSFAS, which one are the biggest risks. You had a whole list of problems. We are addressing them one by one in a very systematic way based on the facts. TVETs aren't necessarily mistreated, remember. So I do think you need to understand that this is a mutual relationship. So it's not that we are mistreating the TVETs. It is that we are faced also with having to enable TVETs to empower themselves to be able to make the same decisions and to effect the same things that other universities do. So might come over like being mistreated, but I don't think the mistreating is necessarily the right word. Also, TVETs are, they were, I think it was the closeout project that you raised, member Sibande. So they were given to the 30th of April to send us their closeout reports. So at this point, the SIU has recovered about 2 billion in the closeout report. The SIU is currently in court today, tomorrow, and the day thereafter with regards to the contracts where you also asked about money that is going missing because of these different contracts. So the SIU is currently in there trying to get those contracts out of place, in place. I want to just make a comment. Also, Member Sibande, you said, how do we change the thinking, was your question. How do we change the thinking of students? So, and there were a lot of questions. I think if we change the thinking of students to think that it's not necessarily that you go to any tertiary education or you get a tertiary education that you will have a job necessarily in the end. You need to be able to teach students that in the end they can be able to create their own job or even create a job for people. I've been doing some research on specifically medicine or medical students. So, for example, one doctor that graduates, and I will say 20% of doctors that are being graduated are NSFAS bursary holders, create 17 jobs. So rather for a if we can change the mindset of a doctor to start a practice, or even a dietitian or a physio or whoever, then they create 17 jobs. So rather than wanting to go work somewhere, we need to probably infiltrate entrepreneurship thinking a little bit better, but that's off the point. There was also a question on service providers that overcharge and how do we keep regulate the accommodation. So like I was saying, we are doing an accommodation audit to make sure that everything is in place. But the problem is not always where NSFAS keeps control of it. It is outside where we do have control. Going to give over to the CEO if I missed something.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think perhaps just to add a couple of things. I think it's important to recognize where NSFAS is at today, right? So NSFAS has been under administration twice and has had a board of directors that was dissolved over the last 6 years or so. The Minister for DHET appointed this board to take over from the administrator on the 1st of Feb, and the board had asked me to act as the CEO from the 4th of March onwards. So we are fairly new in the cycle, not that is an excuse in any way, but it speaks to a large degree of instability that's been present in the institution, and there really is a need to bring governance and stability to the institution so that it can really fulfill its mandate. That's as far as I'm aware, is that South Africa's largest public entity, and it really can't afford to fail as an institution because it has close to 1 million students who are dependent on it at any given point in time. Just to speak to some of the issues, one of the things we've been trying to do to address late payments and then making students dependent on transactional issues to survive is that we have introduced the upfront payments to try and ensure that students have money as fast as possible in their accounts. Many of them are traveling from far distances to be able to access higher education. So to respond to the Honorable Aris, I saw yesterday there was a piece published about the Northwest and students not paid on time, and it intrigued me quite a bit because when we look at our records, we've made 2 upfront payments to the University of the Northwest here. Yeah. And, I got in touch with the university to try and understand what the challenge was. And here you have a challenge where it's not necessarily a NSFAS related issue. The money has been disbursed to the university, and the university has not passed that on to the students because they're having some institutional challenges. Now, in that case, it's rather unfair to blame NSFAS for that situation. But because NSFAS's reputation sometimes precedes it, it becomes a useful punching bag. I reached out to the university and I reached out to the media house as well to say, I think it's genuinely unfair to blame NSFAS when we are not responsible for, and it's irresponsible journalism as well. At least ask us for a comment on what the situation is. And to the university, if they're having challenges, they also have a responsibility to reach out to us so that we can help them to be able to manage the situation. As it relates to a 4.4 billion investment surplus, there will always be a difference between NSFAS's reporting because the academic year concludes in December, whereas the financial year concludes in March. So NSFAS will have a surplus of funding, but that is committed funding. And at no point over the last few years am I aware of an instance where NSFAS has been required to return any surpluses to the fiscus or to National Treasury. As it relates to decentralization, I think in principle, at the institution, we agree that there has to be a decentralization process that comes with governance requirements in terms of human resources consultations, in terms of structure development, in terms of locating office space at institutions of higher learning. There is a decentralization task team which is in place, which is making proposals on what decentralization could look like in time for the 2026 academic year. Today's presentation, I think, asked us to focus on funding, but we'd be happy to come back to the committee and report on decentralization. I think where students are being mistreated, we would be happy to take any formal complaints in that regard. We do ask students, we request them to write to us should they be experiencing challenges so that we can help them to be able to resolve. In terms of discrimination of UNISA students, I think we also have to recognize that UNISA is a distance learning university and that we can't pay the same thresholds for allowances if students are living and studying at home, particularly in light of the physical challenges that are present in the country. I think to respond to student accommodation, the way we see it is that effectively there's two challenges with student accommodation. Or let me say three challenges. One at one level, we have a structural problem in that, particularly in rural parts of the country, there's just insufficient student accommodation to house students, right? And we've become dependent on, private landlords, we've become dependent on non-accredited accommodation. Now, this is a structural problem that requires not only a NSFAS solution, but consultation within the ecosystem, including with the infrastructure working group, right? Because it is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity in that if we can map out what future demand looks like, we can really stimulate the construction sector to be able to, have sufficient student accommodation that meets the demand into the future. The second challenge we have is that the system as it is, even with what's available, is not allocating accommodation effectively and efficiently. And that's the problem we're trying to solve, is to say where accommodation is available, we have to improve our placement outcomes so that one, it's done more efficiently, but two, students have a positive experience of the student accommodation process. Yeah. To move to Honorable Adriance's questions, we didn't necessarily present the forensic and the investigation report, but because the presentation focused on funding, but happy to come back to do that. The SIU has, I think, 6 areas of interest that they are investigating on an ongoing basis. I think it would also be good if the committee were to receive that report from the SIU. But just to say, in terms of the investigations to date, they've recovered about 2.8 billion, of which 2 billion has already been returned to NSFAS, and about 800 million is in the pipeline to be able to be received back. So that tells you the scale of the problem that you're dealing with. I think Honorable Adrianza also speaks to an important point, is to say at university level, what role are they playing in supporting students? And let me say this, I think NSFAS is so busy putting out fires on a daily basis around allowances and student accommodation that we haven't necessarily thought through the impact of the fund, right? How do we get a better quality of graduate out of the system here, right? And that's really the vision of where the institution needs to go. So we need to sort out all these systematic and structural challenges so that really what we start talking about is value and impact of NSFAS. Yeah. In terms of dropout rate and completion, the figures I have at hand is that when we talk about throughput, about 1 in 2 NSFAS funded students, which starts actually ends up graduating. So we're sitting at about a 50% throughput rate, which is really not good. And it's a figure that needs to move upwards into the future. Correspondingly, on the absorption rate in terms of the economy for NSFAS graduates, the latest figure that we have available is 91%. And that's a much better figure. And it tells you the value and the quality of a higher education degree in South Africa. Yeah. In terms of lessons from past administrative failures, we are reflecting on both the administrators' reports and really as this board, putting in place the institutional systems and processes that will enable NSFAS to function efficiently into the future. In terms of Honorable Sibanda's questions, I fully concur. Rejected applications and appeals, they can be disheartening. They can place a lot of mental pressure on students. We are working hard internally to have all appeals concluded and funding decisions by the 31st of March, so that students are at least aware of where they stand. We have about 140 case workers at NSFAS, and they are able to process about 1,000 cases per day. Honorable Sibanda, I think I did respond to how much has been recovered, but we're also happy to share in writing, Chairperson, the detail of the recoveries. I think Honorable Duplessis asks an important question about Bro, and I think you listed all of the challenges, right? And it's true. NSFAS has deep systematic and structural challenges that it's facing here. Yeah. And that's why the fund is not having necessarily the impact and the desire that we wanted to have in society. But I think that there's a few things that if we do over the next 12 months, one is ensuring that our governance structures are appropriate to meet the mandate of the fund. 2 is improving our systems as an organization. 3 is finding the correct mandate between institutions of higher learning as well as NSFAS in terms of who is responsible for what, and leveraging off each other's strengths rather than trying to be competitors in the sector. If we can sort out 3 to 4 broader governance frameworks, I really think we can position the fund in 2026 academic year to be in a much better position to be very student-centered and responsive to the needs of students. Yeah. And then, Chairperson, lastly, in terms of your questions, I think in terms of collusion, we'd really urge students who are aware of collusion and who come across it to report it to NSFAS. If we receive a formal letter or email, then we can ask our investigation teams to look at it and to ensure that action is taken against unscrupulous actors in the student accommodation space. Thank you, Chair. Acting DG, let me hand back to you.
Thank you, NSFAS. Thank you, Chair. We will now move back to the department, and now we will start with DDG Fuchane.
Thank you very much, Acting DG. I'm going to be very brief in relation to the questions that have been asked. The first one was a concern regarding the lack of maths and science lecturers. My apologies for not indicating the name properly on the screen, indicated as Honorable Pat. I need to indicate that I think generally as a country, we have a challenge in terms of maths and science lecturers, but specifically in our community colleges. We have enough, or actually over enough number of lecturers. In fact, we have a very high wage bill that is sitting at 92% in terms of salaries for the sector, which is an anomaly because it should be around 65%. However, as we are losing the lecturers, we lose lecturers in all subjects across. We also lose our maths and science lecturers. The difficulty is replacing them. And the replacing them is a difficulty first in the limited funding that we have. Already our wage bill is too high at 92%. But also, most importantly, finding maths and science lecturers that will come into the sector. When colleges migrated from provincial education departments to the Department of Higher Education and Training, they migrated with their conditions of service. Most, if not all, our college lecturers work only 3 to 5 hours per day. which means then comparatively their salaries would be lower than those of schools and TVET colleges. And they would rather go to a school to teach maths or to a TVET college than come to the sector. What are we doing to circumvent this challenge? One of the key mechanisms that we're doing to circumvent this challenge is that we are putting our key subjects on a digital learning platform, including video lectures, where we're using the best of our maths and science lecturers for the creation of those videos in terms of the learning areas. We are doing this work with a CPUT and is currently under development, whilst of course we are not giving up on the other process of recruitment. Honorable Du Plessis asked the question about why the occupational programs are so low in terms of numbers. This is a new terrain for our community education and training colleges. Must indicate also that the occupational skills programs and the non-formal programs are not funded from the voted funds. The funding from that comes from when colleges submit proposals to NSF and to CETAS. But the biggest challenge is that to be able to offer your occupational and skills programs, you need accreditation. And to have the accreditation, you need to have the correct infrastructure. 95% of community colleges are operating from DBE schools, which do not have workshops. So accreditation in that regard is very, very difficult. How are we circumventing this challenge? We are slowly but surely moving our community education and training colleges into TVET colleges where there are spaces. And in that manner, they're able to share the workshops, and it then becomes easier for them to then get the accreditation. The other question asked by Honorable Du Plessis was about the adult matric. The adult matric has already been gazetted as a qualification. It's in the final stages of development, and implementation is targeted for 2017 because it still has to go through the Umalusi processes. On the 20th of February, led by Honorable Deputy Minister Manamela, there was a workshop on all the key stakeholders in the sector on the National Senior Certificate for Adults. And last but certainly not least, the question from the Honorable Chairperson was about how are we going to make our colleges more attractive. And I think that is through advocacy, which we continue to do. But most importantly, it's going to be on the provision of quality qualifications and where we can show that if you come from either a TVET college or a CET college, your pathways, particularly into self-employment and into the workplace, the more we can demonstrate that, the more our colleges are going to be attractive. I must indicate, though, that our community education and training colleges, because in terms of the NQF, mainly operate at entry level in terms of qualifications, and therefore many instances are a launch pad into a TVET college or into a university. And last but not least, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Feni indicated that we need to do more to popularize CETs. Indeed, I fully agree and I appreciate the comment. 1st of April 2025 marks a decade of community education and training. One of the key projects that we are running with, led by Honorable Deputy Minister Manamela, is the rebranding of our community education and training colleges. And you will see more of CET colleges in this space. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. Thank you, Acting DG.
Thank you, DDG Fuchani. DDG Zungu.
Thank you very much, Acting DG and Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. I will shoot straight to the question, although I was not clear by Honorable Sibande in relation to how do we do the planning or budgets, which for the TVET sector in terms of our projections, they are linked to the available fiscus, which I would say over the past 8 years has been averaging around 13.4 billion for the TVET sector. And currently we are sitting at about 15.2 billion. But this is only sufficient to cover about 480,000 enrollments per annum. in the TVET sector, which is far less than what is envisaged by 2030, that we should be sitting at about 2.5 million enrollments in the TVET space, which will then answer the question that was raised by the chair as to how do we motivate young people to consider TVET more than the other forms of education. So the projections are done, and then the limitation will only be the availability of funds for us to grow the sector. At some point back in 2017, I think we're sitting just above 700,000 enrollments within the TVET space, but that has since dwindled because of the stagnant growth. If I may take in 2021, 2022, we only grew about minus 1.9%. And in 2022-23 at 2.1%, and in 23-24, 1.23%. I think only now in 2024-25 that we're envisaging a growth of about 4.6%. So all in average, the MTF allocations only increases on an average of about 5% per annum, which is only marginal inflationary adjustment, and therefore limits the expansion of the TVET sector at this point in time. DDG Fuchane has addressed the issue of the shortage of maths and science teachers, and I think it also applies to the TVET sector, particularly the campuses of TVETs that are rural based, where we are unable to draw or to recruit the STEM teachers or lecturers, because unlike the basic education where there's a special dispensation for teachers within the STEM, that does not apply within the TVET space. And that poses a lot of limitations for us to attract such talents in those areas. So it is a challenge, but there are discussions. I think DDG, so the acting DG, will touch on how is the two departments, Department of Basic Education and Higher Education, is addressing that challenge of the supply of the STEM teachers within the systems. I think Honorable Spande also touched on the issue of the tracking systems, as how we are tracking the students. Indeed, I think within the TVET sector is still a major challenge, because not all colleges have got well-established alumni services, but we are able to use our systems to ensure that the graduates of the TVETs are tracked for them to be able to find work placements. As we speak, we have a target of about 25,000 for 2024-2025 that we are looking at this point in time, to ensure that they get the necessary work placement. Because if they don't get it, it means the theory that they've acquired will remain meaningless until such time that they get proper work placement for them to get their full qualification. I will move on to Honorable Du Plessis. A very important question, Honorable Du Plessis and Chair, on why do we have a low uptake in relation to occupational programs, because she spoke about the issues of redress. Indeed, that is the reason why we are moving towards occupational programs, and we are on a phase-out, phase-in process, where we are phasing out the outdated NATED N1 to N3 programs, and the last intake is this year, with the final examination of the N3 by end of 2025. And this is a way of ensuring that our TVET colleges remain both relevant and responsive in terms of industry needs and that of the communities at large. So the reason for the low uptake is that it's a trade-off process, where we are trading off the limited resources that we are utilizing for us to offer NATED programs, and now we are transferring them towards occupational programs. So up until we conclude the phase out, then we will see a greater increase in terms of the uptake of the occupational programs. Of course, that comes with a lot of challenges, because the program cost of offering NATED is far less than offering occupational programs. So we need to have substantial investment in relation to the infrastructure, because for NATED N1, 2, and 3, you will just need just a simple classroom that you'll find in basic education to offer that theory, because how these programs were designed, they were designed for people that were already employed by industry, where they will be sent to colleges to gain a theoretical component, and then the practical component they would have earned or gained in the industry. Now that has changed over the years, because we're now taking young people or students straight from school without being attached to a particular industry. And these kind of programs were mainly driven and offered by our state-owned enterprises, the likes of Transnet, Eskom, Telcoms, and all of those. And that has since been moved to the colleges, which do not have the capability of offering the practical component. So we are busy phasing them out, and we are now introducing. So the other challenge of occupational programs that we must still continue to prepare and develop our lecturers. And as we speak, we have trained since the beginning of the year over 240 lecturers that are now part of the 18 occupational programs that we are busy introducing in our respective colleges. I must say, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, that again, these occupational programs, some of them are geared to offer opportunities, not just for our young people to look for employment or seek employment, but also to start their own businesses. An example is the occupational program on hairdressing, where we have a total nationally about 800 new enrollments in this specific occupational program. And we can guarantee that out of all these 800, if they all graduate, because they will then graduate as qualified artisans. They will be trade tested and become artisans. As soon as they get that, they will then be eligible to even start their own businesses. We have a program on developing entrepreneurs working together in partnership with the Allen Gray philanthropies that are assisting us together with other state entities like the Department of Economic Development that is assisting us with the likes of CEDA that is assisting our young students to be able to start their own business. So these occupational programs will really assist us in addressing the issues of high unemployment by offering opportunities for young people to start their own businesses. Indeed, Honorable du Plessis, the presentation, as we read it, was that we needed to talk to the registrations and enrollments and not to the broader issues and complex issues that are affecting the sectors. But if there is a need for us to supply that, particularly in relation to governance and all other related challenges within the sector, we're clearly able to provide such information as may be requested by the committee. But in this regard, we thought that we are addressing the issues of enrollments, how they've gone from what we planned as the department, and what is it that we've been able to achieve at this point in time. But we can then expand on some of the issues, as you've probably pointed out, that there are challenges in relation to governance, in relation to funding matters and so forth. I will move on to Honorable Chair that also raised a very important question as to how are we addressing the issues of skills mismatch. Indeed, part of the reason why we are now introducing the occupational programs, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, it's informed by the labor market intelligence reports that we are getting in terms of the skills in high demand and what is it that we can do to ensure that the institutional pre-QMs or program qualification mixes are indeed responsive to those needs for the skills in high demand, so that our graduates, as they exit, they are not frustrated in joining the long queue of the unemployed graduates. So that's how we're trying to address. Of course, this requires very strong industry partnerships in terms of curriculum development, in terms of the capacity building of our staff and so forth. So those are some of the things that we are trying to do in addressing the issues of skills mismatch. Then the other issue the Honorable Chair raised is around the TVET qualifications that they somehow viewed as substandard. That's a perception, a general perception that is out there, and we do need to destigmatize this issue of TVET system within our country. Of course, these institutions, in terms of their institutional types, they are designed for specific mandates that they need to. For instance, TVETs are mainly for producing artisans in the main. Of course, we define artisans differently from the rest of the world, where the Germans, they will not only focus on your hardcore your trades, like your plumbers, electricians, and so forth. They go as far as looking at dressers, confectionaries, blockmen, your office admin, who are also taken through trade tests and become artisans as an office admin who's a qualified artisan. So within our context, we're still focusing on those. So we are meant to be producing artisans in the main. Universities of technology, they should be producing technicians, and then your universities, maybe your professional engineers and so forth. So we've got specific mandates. So when we get this issue of the qualifications being underlooked, it depends on what is it that particular student is looking for. You can't have an artisan looking for a job of a professional engineer. So I think it's some of the things that we need to look at. But if we're saying we're comparing the artisans or qualifications of people coming from different TVETs, then that will make sense. But we do know that sometimes our communities, and that's how most of us grew up, that in order for you to make a living and a career, you must follow the university. I think that's why when DDG Sotiwa was presenting the statistics of young people that are exiting basic education, and that's what we refer as the inverted pyramid, that we have a huge number of bachelor passes of 337,000, and then you've got about 278,000 diploma passes. But you'll find that majority of young people who want to pursue the university route as opposed. But when you look at the job market and what is demanded, some of the entry and middle level jobs, they require qualifications from artisans. So even in our budget allocation, I spoke about a 15 billion allocation for TVETs, but if you look at the total budget of the department, is quite substantive amount that goes to university education. And I think it's something that we need to say as a country. How do we prioritize training more supervisors and supervisees? Because out of one professional engineer, you probably need about 10 artisans. But if you look at our budget allocation, we train more professional engineers than the artisans. And I think it's something that is an anomaly that we need to address, both as government, private sector, and all of the relevant stakeholders. So we do need to destigmatize. We do have, Honorable Chair, career awarenesses that are targeting the life orientation teachers from basic education, but also targeting your grade 8 and grade 9s, because we need to capture them at that level, not at grade 12. So we have what is called open days in colleges, using our entity that is called CATA, that is allowing young people to choose. We have what is called a touch and feel, where they learn how is it and what is it that is required to become a bricklayer, a plumber, an electrician. So we have such a opportunity, but of course it's not adequate. I think strong marketing initiatives are still required to change the perceptions of our communities, and particularly parents who are also looking at sending their children to universities. Lastly, Honorable Chair, There has been a meeting between our minister and the Minister of Basic Education that took place last week, Monday, that focused on the issues of articulation, also the possible duplication between the two systems, particularly the basic education 3-stream model that allows option for young people to opt to go vocational route or technical route or go to the mainstream universities. So there has been those discussions, but also around the issue of teacher development, focusing on STEM subjects, as well as research capabilities, how the two departments can assist each other. And the last point was on the infrastructure, which DDG Fushade touched on, that most of the CET centers are utilizing the school. So we had that meeting between the two ministries and the two departments so that we can see how we can begin to assist each other in this regard. Because the main thing, Honorable Chair, that you raised, that a student from a TVET is unable to articulate to universities. And that is an issue that talks to the articulation policy that is not fully implemented because of the issues of autonomy that university will sometimes hold that card of autonomy in terms of minimum requirements, and that their focus is only on matriculants as opposed to one system of education within the same country. So even amongst themselves, if you do BCom at one of your historically disadvantaged institutions, you come from University of Zulu and you want to do BCom at WITS, you still find that some of the students will be required to start from first year instead of proceeding with their second or third year. So those are some of the challenges that are being currently addressed through these engagements that I've already made mention. I would want to submit Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, and thanks Acting DG.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start mainly with your comments and speak to the criteria of institutions. Indeed, we were quite surprised when we engaged the institutions at the beginning of this year, the extent to which the admission criteria, which are defined by the Council of the Universities, have been intensified to filter through students who have the highest marks. Yes, this promotes excellence, but in the interim, it means our middle performers are then completely excluded with no second chance. We have said to the universities we would certainly want to have a discussion with them because it invariably does not only lead to a defeat of what public institution means, because the point we made was public means there to serve the public, not a select few. And their review of the admission criteria may create an imbalance that will be very difficult for us to defend on the banner of public. So we hope to have that discussion, Chair, having noticed the extent to which it is now being applied, and the degree to which many students are excluded. We also have to acknowledge the question of the skills mismatch. Indeed, in our study, we established that quite a few of the engineers the sector has produced are working in banks. They are not working with our infrastructure projects. And we can say this about many qualifications, but of course, the most painful part is where you've earned your degree and you are rendered unemployed for life. And in fact, there is a study that we also saw called the And this is a problem across the world, where it was found that there is a generation that will sit at home indefinitely. And this is a function of two things, Chair. It is a function of the market, but it is also a function of universities not being flexible enough to adjust to the change in market requirements. What do we do on our side? We have what we call the enrollment plan, where we direct universities to target an intake of a certain mix of qualifications. Currently, our emphasis is on science-related subjects, given that the market is in need, at least at a professional level, not vocational, because vocational has its own market demands, but at a professional level, it's certainly a demand for science-related subjects. And we have tried to increase year on year the intake of science candidates from a basic education. However, Chair, to our dismay, we learned that last year, that is 2024, many of our youngsters decided to move from pure maths to maths literacy. Why this was encouraged, I don't know. Of course, we did hear that there's some schools that refuse to allow students to do maths literacy. That was a good decision, because maths literacy then prevents you from entering the pure sciences, such as the physics. So therefore, you saw the drop in the numbers of physics, largely tied to the, and it's the extent, I'll try and get the statistics for you in our written report. It was 60% moved to maths literacy. And that is a huge puncher into our project of increasing access to science. So it is really something we need to attend to. We have decided to partner with Basic Education. This year in particular, we are holding a maths festival with the help of UWC, University of Western Cape. We'll be inviting as many parents, teachers, as learners as we can to speak about the import of mathematics. Everywhere in the world, mathematics is the foundation for learning to solve problems. And if we do not pay attention, we will not be able to solve our own problems. And we certainly don't want to be hiring from abroad at these expensive rates of consultants when we've got skills locally. So we'll be paying great attention. This will be our first workshop. We try to stimulate excitement around mathematics again. We've also agreed with Basic Education that we'll be looking at better training and improved attention to the training of physics teachers and mathematics teachers. We've seen the results based on a study we've done, and we are not happy. We know we can do better. We know our learners deserve better. So we have started on that project. And then, Chair, on the commentary from Honourable Du Plessis on risk analysis and mitigation, we accept, and we will certainly share in our written submissions elaborate interventions we've made to mitigate against some of our challenges, particularly in NSFAS. And I just thought, Chair, let me just quickly point to the recent investigation around the SASSA, where where the investigators found 260 million worth of funds. And that is an immediate red flag for NSFAS. And so it means filtering and ensuring that deserving students gain the grant would be an important exercise. moving forward. So we must appreciate all the investigations that are proceeding. They help us with our work, particularly those tied to the SIU VAX month's report. They have assisted in identifying fraud early. And there are court cases underway as we speak. We cannot say much about them because they are sub judice. But as soon as the outcomes of those processes are confirmed, Chair, we will certainly share with the honourable members in our reports. Then Honourable Sibanda raised the issue of language being an advantage to some and a disadvantage to others. Chair, I must say, we have spent about 720 million the past 2 or 3 years to ensure that universities start training in languages again. And I'm happy to announce that we note that UCT it will now has identified IXXOSA as an important language in the university environment, teaching environment that is. We are really excited about that as more and more universities embrace multilingualism in their institutions as required in our constitution. And then, Chair, on the question of mathematics lecturers, I hope, Honourable Sibanda, we've covered that. It is work under construction, and we must accept we are working extremely hard given the aging teaching population in mathematics and physics. It is a long-term project because it means so much to the development of our country. And then on lessons learned, I think Honourable Adrian raised the question about lessons learned on the debacle with the disbursements. We accept, Chair, it was looking retrospectively unwise to have made that move. And we certainly hope in the new modelling, and we are at the level of NSFAS going to encourage the board to consider a cost-effective way of disbursement such that the middleman is not a beneficiary to the detriment of our students. Our students remain first and most our key stakeholders, not the middlemen in all these different transactions. And then lastly, Chair, I think Honourable Aries raised the question on why UNISA students are getting less. Chair, the model of UNISA was largely and initially, and the challenges in the current Act, and until the Act is reviewed, it does pose a bigger challenge. But you'll recall, UNISA was by design for matured students. And matured students, accepting that these are students mostly who are working. It has slowly evolved to take on far more younger students who should be going to our TVET colleges and to our universities to benefit from contact, physical engagement with their lecturers. This change has been happening faster than policy can change. So we will need to make this adjustment, but it will require review of policy and legislation in how we engage with the UNISA profile. Of course, the other limitation is funding. We can only do so much with what we have in the fiscus, and the demand from our students is extensive. And as per the Constitution, we can only do so incrementally as and when we have funding. With those words, Chair, I must appreciate the level of questions posed to us. We always learning and always improving through your vigilance. We must acknowledge, Chair, that without these interventions, without us being accountable to you, we are not, we are all the poorer. So we thank you for these questions. We may not have done justice to cover all of them, but we will certainly do so in writing where we have failed you, Chair. And we thank you for this opportunity always. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG, and also to NFSA's delegation for giving us some clarities versus your higher education. However, I think all of us, one thing that is common in terms of our articulation is that we are realizing that there is a gap that needs to be closed. That gap, if is not being closed, we are going to be confronted with a crisis and in fact, we are in crisis as well, currently speaking, of young people that we are channeling them through these processes. And then at the end of the day, they found themselves wanting. They have attended education lekgotla. That is why some of these issues are I'm a little bit wiser now as how I think it was Mr. Zungu, if I'm not mistaken, that made a very articulate contribution specifically on this gap that is not being closed, specifically in your higher education sector. That gap continues to widen. The problem of autonomy of this institution cannot be allowed to frustrate our young people, especially those who are supposed to be joining the job market. What is currently happening has been happening for a number of years. We will be very happy to see that gap being addressed, especially with regard to the question of funding your NFSAs. Because once you identify that NFSAs does not address what was meant for, it is going to come back to us and haunt us, as it is the current situation. You know, we are not sleeping. Every day we see very, very disturbing, challenges that are facing young people in these institutions of higher learning. So I think the cooperation must be enforced, understanding, of course, the line that has been drawn between these sectors, but there must be a way of cooperation. Otherwise, if this cooperation is not being enforced, we will have serious challenges, as we are currently having some of these challenges. We will also be, I must submit that members of the committee must be invited to form part of this this workshop that is being proposed, so that they are also part of those engagements. They start there with their oversight work. They don't only receive the end result, also they form part of engagement so that they can assist in reshaping the discussion there as they are having their political mandates. They can translate them into practice. I think we are arriving now at the conclusion of our session. I'm once again thanks all the presenters and the team that you've brought with. But I still, Mrs. Fuchani, pardon me, I still feel very much that something needs to be done at the level of the cities. In Gqeberha, we used to have one there that was called Mthonjeni. It used to produce employers. It used to produce entrepreneurs. I still believe that we need to do more. I'm not saying that there is nothing that is being done, but in this current challenge that we're faced with, and in fact, with what NDP 2030 raises about the question of skills. How do we bridge that gap that have been identified? How do we ensure that come 2030, we do not have these dwindling skills that we are currently having in this country? In fact, South Africa is becoming a place of hope for entrepreneurs. We are not going around looking for employment. We do have our own employers here, because I believe that we have all the necessary resources to do that, so that we can change the economy of this country. Question of bullying to become by another countries, whilst our country is independent. It can't be that. It can't even in this day and age. So if we are failing to do that at the level of the skill, proper skilling of our young people, we will go around begging these countries to have mercy on us. I do not think that this is the country that we want to have. By those few words, I'm appreciating the presentation that have been made. I think we are left with white item, if I'm not mistaken. You can remain, or the choice is yours, DG, with your team. If you want to engage, I mean, to sit until you finish, then you can do. At the same time, you are released. Thank you very much. Ms. Kaka, can you take, because I do not have the agenda in front of me. If we are done, we can adjourn our meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much to the honorable members.
Oh, there's nothing else now, Chair. We are done.
Oh, okay, no, okay. By those few words, those were the closing remarks. Thank you very much, honorable members, our support staff that has been always been with us, the departments that made presentation. The meeting is adjourned very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Dr. Matikwa, don't lock me in the lift again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.